Did you know that the United States squandered $17 billion on a megaproject that has never been used and remains entirely useless even today? And that there is a capital city that was intended to house millions of people but is now essentially abandoned? Today, we will explore 5 of the most useless megaprojects in the world. Before we continue, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Luxury Living. And please share your thoughts about these megaprojects in the comments below. Number 1. Interstate H3 Hawaii. Let's start with a highway on Hawaii's island of Oahu that is 26 kilometers long and runs through one of the most beautiful landscapes on Earth. It is so breathtakingly beautiful that there were actual worries about drivers stopping and posing a danger to the flow of traffic. The highway, though, is just as contentious as it is stunning, as the roadway would link the Marine Corps Air Station on the east coast to the naval facility at Pearl Harbor on the south side. It was first suggested in 1960 with defensive considerations in mind. Native Hawaiians and environmentalists who are concerned about the project's huge urbanization expressed opposition to it as soon as it was announced that it would be built. Plans were perpetually postponed due to environmental regulations in effect at the time and a modification en route to protect the adjacent valleys. The project was exempted from environmental rules by Congress 26 years later, removing the barriers to construction, which could then start in 1989. In 1997, some 37 years after it was first suggested, the highway was eventually completed. Because of the challenging terrain it was built on and the cutting-edge technologies that were employed in its construction, Interstate H3 is sometimes regarded as an engineering marvel. To safeguard the local ecosystem in the valleys below, the highway goes almost entirely over through ducts, in addition to the several high-tech tunnels. It was finished 5 times over the expected budget due to decades of route deterioration and newer but more expensive technologies. Construction overall cost $1.3 billion, or $50 million per kilometer, making it the most expensive per kilometer in the world. Despite having a huge budget, not everyone can benefit from this gorgeous highway. Because the 1960s defense reasons are no longer applicable and there is no direct route from the highway to downtown Honolulu, critics claim that it is a road leading nowhere. Then there is the issue of Native Hawaiians, the majority of whom still refuse to use the H3, believing it to be cursed due to the destruction of numerous culturally and religiously significant sites during construction. In terms of megaprojects, the Interstate H3 highway is unquestionably an accomplishment. However, it continues to be useless for some native populations. Even though it is one of the world's most useless megaprojects, at least it hasn't been abandoned entirely like the next project we're going to look at. Number 2. Ciudad Real Central Airport, Spain. One of the most popular travel destinations in Europe is Spain, and when the idea for the Ciudad Real Central Airport was conceived, that was a crucial factor. It was predicted that it will become the preferred vacation spot for both domestic and foreign tourists. The goal of this new airport was to provide a viable alternative to Madrid's already incredibly packed main airport. The new airport can accommodate 2 million people annually and has one of the top 5 longest runways in all of Europe. Considering Madrid can accommodate 70 million passengers, that is a low figure. However, there were already plans in place to increase the capacity to 10 million per year. In 2009, when it eventually started operating, the $1.3 billion cost could have appeared reasonable. All of these strategies, however, were put on hold in 2012 when the project's sponsor filed for bankruptcy. The project's location was where the issues first surfaced. Despite being termed the Central Airport, it wasn't in any way central because it was 200 kilometers outside of Madrid. This made matters worse because most travelers disliked making the long trip to the distant site, and the majority of major airlines chose to operate their flights from the nation's capital. So the newly constructed airport had only one small-time airline operating at the end of the first year of operation, without any big airlines to draw travelers. By 2012, the airport owed $350 million in debt. Naturally, it entered receivership and was offered for sale in 2013. Even the idea of the airport as a deserted place gained popularity by the popular British television program Top Gear in 2014. The airport was finally sold to new owners in 2019 after several auctions, including one with an absurd $12,000 offer, fell through. The Ciudad Rail Airport received a lifeline as businesses collapsed and profits dropped due to the COVID-19 outbreak. Given its dry climate, lengthy runway, and spaciousness, the new owners decided to reimagine the airport as a haven for grounded planes with little possibility of passengers returning. Until August 2020, there were 65 airplanes parked at the airport, and there were plans afoot to expand it so that it could house more than 300 aircraft. The airport received a much-needed revenue opportunity because to this innovative storage method. We included this billion-dollar megaproject on our list of the most useless megaprojects in the world because it continues to be essentially useless for travelers. Number 3. Napier Myanmar. It's not just a distant airport that ranks 3rd on the list of the world's most useless megaprojects. It is Myanmar's capital, a brand new capital that was created from nothing. In 2002, a new capital was being constructed covertly by the previous military government of Myanmar. The relocation of a nation's capital is not unheard of. Other nations, including Pakistan, Egypt, and Brazil, have done it in the past. The leader of Myanmar made his decision public in November 2005, however he did not reveal the name of the new capital. He finally unveiled the name Napier, which means literally the residence of the kings, 4 months later. This abrupt transfer of capital had no apparent cause. Some believed that the military command changed because of astrological council, while others said it was due to a fear of an attack from the sea. The former capital of Myanmar, Yangon, which is home to 7 million people and is expected to quadruple in size by 2050, is thought to have reached its infrastructure limits. In addition, the seaside city was made the nation's capital during British administration in order to support the British Navy. Therefore, moving the capital to a more central location made sense for Myanmar. The new project was completed quickly, and up to this point, the city has received $4 billion from various governments. Napier appears to have everything to draw tourists: a 20-lane motorway, more than 100 five-star hotels organized into 3 distinct hotel districts, golf courses, museums, and even a 99-meter-tall replica of a Yangon icon. However, one crucial element is still absent: the populace. Less than 1 million people call this new capital home. The most of them live in the suburbs that existed before the city was made the capital. Why, therefore, does nobody want to live there? Most of the population is hesitant to settle down permanently in the city due to a persistent shortage of health facilities, high-quality educational institutions, and employment possibilities. As a result, the city frequently gives the impression of being deserted and is frequently referred to as a ghost town. The incredible 20-lane freeway is almost completely deserted. There is never any traffic congestion, and occasionally a single car is seen drifting along the enormous road. It might be useful in the future, but as of right now, it ranks among the world's most useless megaprojects. The airport in the city has a capacity of 3.5 million passengers annually, yet only about a dozen people will actually utilize it on a busy day. The diplomatic personnel only visits the malls on the weekends, while the hotel lobbies are typically deserted. Despite the royal capital's appearance of emptiness, there is some good news. With Napier's rapidly growing population, it was designed as a metropolis of the future and yet has time for an inevitable comeback. The majority of the population of the country still finds it to be useless, making it currently the world's strangest capital. Number 4. Forest City, Malaysia. After discussing a seemingly abandoned city, we will discuss a green, smart metropolis that would be developed around an artificial forest environment and rise from reclaimed ground on 4 artificial islands. For investors looking to profit from its proximity to the autonomous city-state of Singapore, Forest City's position makes it a desirable wager. Singapore boasts the second busiest port in the world and a booming economy. The second link bridge, built by the developers, already connects Forest City to Singapore, cutting the travel time between the two cities to just 20 minutes. Additionally, Forest City will have a customs facility of its own, allowing citizens to easily travel to Singapore and return. The design is said to include numerous eco-friendly improvements. Buildings in Forest City will have green rooftops and vertical gardens to simulate a rainforest. With a multi-layered architecture, city streets will have a lower layer for parking and traffic, while parks, sports venues, and transportation hubs will be found in the higher stratum. The metropolis, which would cost $100 billion when finished in 2035, will run entirely on renewable energy. An island with 50 apartment structures, golf courses, swimming pools, and beaches is one of the 4 that have been proposed. However, this extremely ambitious undertaking is not without its challenges. Already, a plethora of political and economic barriers are impeding its development. Chinese citizens essentially enjoyed a free pass to the city during the first few years of building because the project is primarily sponsored by China. Rich Chinese investors who couldn't afford the skyrocketing rents in their own nation rushed to Forest City as a result. 80% of the property owners were Chinese as of 2019. The few new schools that have opened in the neighborhood are now offering Mandarin classes, and even the street signs are in Mandarin. Due to the fact that property prices are primarily considered for the Chinese marketplace, native Malaysians simply cannot afford to purchase these apartments. An uproar was generated by the flood of Chinese investors, which opponents of the project saw as a new type of colonialism. Following a change in leadership, the re-elected Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad enacted a law prohibiting foreigners from owning real estate in the Forest City. Foreigners began abandoning the city in large numbers, discouraging prospective investment. The epidemic and the global travel prohibitions were the next significant setback. Due to Malaysia's movement control order, no new investors may settle there. Due to the uncertainty, many previous investors withdrew from the project. Less than 500 individuals were actually residing in the residential complexes by the beginning of 2020, which is a small number given that Forest City is intended to house 700,000 people. Nobody is aware of the potential future outcomes for this infrastructure, which is unfathomably astounding. Because of this, we listed it among the world's most useless megaprojects. Since the beginning of the COVID pandemic, the project has remained in flux, with some salespeople asserting that fewer than 10 homes have been sold at Forest City. Additionally, Country Garden fired almost 1,000 of its Malaysian employees in the previous year, a reflection of the project's dramatic decline in fortunes. Initially, Forest City was undoubtedly too ambitious, too futuristic, and too politically unstable to succeed very soon. Despite the enormous sums of money invested, it is safe to say that Forest City is today an useless megaproject. Number 5. Yucca Mountain, Nevada. A depository for nuclear waste can be built. A huge project that was planned in light of a delicate global issue will round up this list. Nuclear waste is not as frequently discussed as other environmental issues. It can be more deadly than anything ever seen since the dawn of humanity, though, if not stored properly. Nuclear waste is currently kept above ground close to the power facilities it originates from. The scientific community does concur that burying this hazardous material far underground is the safest long-term disposal option. The U.S. government began looking for a long-term solution to this expanding problem in the 1980s. In 1987, the best option was determined to be Yucca Mountain in Nevada. It was far from any population centers and close to the most popular nuclear testing site in the USA. The waste from all around the nation was to be dumped in a tunnel complex that was located about 300 meters beneath Yucca Mountain. You can see that mountain is constructed of volcanic ash that developed millions of years ago in addition to its remote location. On paper, Yucca Mountain seemed like a perfect place for a repository because it allows nuclear waste to be absorbed without collapsing or cracking. However, Nevardians were having none of it. There are approximately 100 nuclear reactor sites in the U.S., both open and closed, spread over 34 states, but none were in Nevada. Therefore, the concept of being the only nuclear disposal site in the entire nation was fiercely opposed by legislative representatives and the general public. The official hydrological and geological surveys of Yucca Mountain have also come under scrutiny. Because of the possibility of contaminating a neighboring water supply, opponents hold the opinion that the location is inappropriate for a repository. Native Americans who have lived in the area for millennia use the water source that flows into Amargosa Valley. The Department of Energy resumed construction after the project was approved in 2002 despite resistance. Nevada, though, only grew more hostile. They argue that frequent exposures throughout the transition will stigmatize Nevardians as citizens and have an impact on the state's tourism industry. According to the opposition, Nevada's lower population and reduced representation in Congress were the only factors in its selection as the depository. The entire project was heavily politicized by the time Barack Obama became office. The Obama government discontinued funding the project in 2010 after determining it was unfeasible. A federal judge mandated its restart 3 years later. However, little has changed since the Biden administration made it apparent that Yucca Mountain is no longer a priority for the nation's objectives. After 4 decades of planning, legal issues, and more than $17 billion invested in the Yucca Mountain project, Nevada appears to have prevailed. But when everything is said and done, it continues to be an useless megaproject that has never been utilized. This concludes the list of the world's most useless megaprojects. Do any of these have a chance of becoming useful in the future, in your opinion? Tell us in the comments section below. If you haven't done it already, please tap that like button and hit subscribe, as we really appreciate it and it helps us to bring out more content that we know you love. Thank you for watching Luxury Living.